Hello, and welcome to the R3 2016 release webinar for Telerik DevCraft. My name is John Bristow, and I'm a member of the Developer Relations team at Progress. Joining me are my colleagues Ed Charbonneau, Todd Motto, and Sam Basu. We'll be walking you through the latest features we've introduced in this release. Before we dive in, I'd like to tell you that we'll be answering your questions via Twitter through the Ask Telerik hashtag. So please make sure to use this hashtag because it will help us find your questions. Also, we'll be giving away an Oculus Rift for the best question that's asked, so it's in your best interest to ask and ask often. Speaking of prizes, we're also giving away an Xbox One S with 2 terabytes of storage to a random attendee for today's webinar. It's our way of saying thanks for taking the time to join us for today's webinar. Please note that both prizes are subject to our sweepstakes rules. Also, please keep an eye open for the wrap-up blog post that we'll be publishing shortly after the conclusion of today's webinar. You'll find this up on the Telerik blog's website, which should be your homepage, and if it's not, please subscribe to the RSS feed or at least bookmark it. Another bookmark-worthy site is the Telerik Developer Network. There you'll find articles on topics that are relevant to you, so please make sure to check that out. Telerik DevCraft is the most complete .NET toolbox for web, mobile, and desktop development. Not only is it easy to use, it provides great value and world-class support and maintenance. Its portfolio features a huge selection of products, including UI controls and tooling to help you build applications that are both beautiful and robust. Our latest release of Telerik DevCraft is full of great new features and enhancements. Most notably, we've added support for ASP.NET Core and Angular 2, both of which are now available. We've also added a bunch of new controls for Kendo UI for jQuery, Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC, Telerik UI for WPF, and Telerik UI for WinForms. And finally, no release would be complete without a ton of enhancements to our existing controls and APIs. Alright, let's kick things off with Ed Charbonneau, who will walk us through the latest features in Kendo UI for jQuery, Telerik UI for ASP.NET Ajax, and Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC.
It's time to talk about updates for one of our most mature products, UI for ASP.NET Ajax. UI for ASP.NET Ajax is a must-have for ASP.NET WebForms development, featuring over 80 plus UI widgets, and capable of running on any browser and any screen size. UI for Ajax utilizes HTML5 and CSS rendering for amazing performance. UI for Ajax's unique set of features allows you to create apps completely using server-side logic, client-side logic, or anywhere in between. In this release, we've continued to add more controls, themes, and features so you can ship faster. The latest update of the Theme Builder application allows you to create and customize themes based on the Silk and Glow skins. You can use them as a starting point to build your own custom skins and update their default color schemes per your project's design. Let's jump into the browser and see the Theme Builder in action. In my browser, I'm going to go to themebuilder.telerik.com, and I'm going to select Create New Theme. And then I just need to give the theme a name, and I'll hit Enter, and it will bring me down to my choice of skins to base the theme on. And I can choose Bootstrap or one of the new existing themes, like Silk. So let me choose Silk, get a little preview here. I like the way that looks. I'm going to go ahead and click on it and hit Select All because I want all of the controls available in UI for ASP.NET Ajax. And then I'm going to click Create. Now, when the editor loads, I'll be able to change any of the colors or theme styles that exist in the entire UI control suite. I'm just going to do a quick base color for this demo. So I'm going to take this accent color and just paste in one of our Progress software colors that we use. And this is one of our purples that we use in our branding. And that looks good. You can see it's proliferated through the entire set of controls that are available. And I can just hit download here and I'll get a nice zip file that I can use in my project. And just that easy, I've created a custom skin that works with my company's branding. And you can easily do that at themebuilder.telerik.com. Next, we have 2 new list controls, the checkbox list and the radio button list, each capable of binding to data using data sources or model binding, and support theming for seamless visual appearance throughout your application. Let's jump over to Visual Studio and see some code. So here I have a simple Telerik UI for ASP.NET Ajax web forms application. It's got a custom theme that I just created, and I want to add some rad radio button list items to it so users can select their favorite products. So you can see I've already got my H1 tag here, select your favorite product, and now I want to add a rad radio button list here. And I'm just going to copy and paste this guy in. We'll say rad radio button list, and I'm going to give it the ID of questionnaire, and I've set auto post back to false. I don't want it to post back each time somebody clicks on one of the items, which is the default behavior. So inside of this rad radio button list, I'm going to declare some static list items, and each one of these is one of our Telerik products, and you can see we just declare those with button list item. So if I go back over to the browser, you can see my radio button list is already rendered here, and I can just click and select an item from those list items. So here's where you can show some flexibility. For example, if your boss looks at the form and says, it's nice that people can select one item, but I'd rather them be able to select multiple items, what we can do is change the rad radio button list to a checkbox list very simply. Because the list items are the same, all we have to do is change the declaration here and say rad checkbox list. And if we save that and go back to the browser, you see that refresh there, and now we have checkboxes instead of the radio buttons. Now let's go back into the code and let's add some model binding here. So model binding is a newer feature for ASP.NET web forms, and I wanted to show that we can support that as well. If I go up to where the checkbox list is declared, we'll have another property in here called select method. And I'm going to say select method will be a method called getItems. Now I haven't created this method yet. We need to go over to our code behind and we'll create that method there. So I'm going to do this really simple for the demo, but we could go out to a database in a full-scale application. For the sake of the demo, I'll just return this as a method here, and I'll use one of the new language features of C# called an expression-bodied member to return a new list of button view model. And if I look at button list view model, it's just a simple plain old class object here that has a text and a selected property on it. And I'm going to bind those properties to the rad checkbox list. So to do that, let's just come back to a rad checkbox and we'll say data bindings, and then we'll give it a data text field, and we'll set that to text because that is what our class has, and we'll also set the selected field to that same selected property on our class. So you can see we have our data text and our selected field. Now we can close this tag off and go back to the browser and just refresh. And you can see that our checkbox list is built out and we have pre-selected one item, just as I have right here in the method getItems. So you can see this middle item here selected was set to true, and that's been bound to this checkbox list on the form. Let's go ahead and exercise the API just a little bit and go back to the form and add a button that we can click on, and we'll go through the checkbox list and pull out the selected items. So I've added a rad button to the form, and I've also added a rad text box that we can use to log out the values from the selected checkbox items. So back to the code behind, let's just put a simple method in here. It captures the button click event, and you can see when the button's clicked, we're just going to go to the questionnaire and get the selected indices from it. And we'll go back to our form, and you can see I have select your favorite products. We can select a couple of these, click submit, and there you can see we have the selected index of each of the items in the checkbox list. So there you have it, the new rad radio button list and checkbox list. You put those in your project today, just download the latest update from release 3 this year. In this release, we've added the new bullet chart and vertical box plot chart. This makes 22 unique chart types available for UI for Ajax. The bullet chart is a variation of the bar chart, which you can use as a replacement for dashboard gauges and meters. The vertical box plot is similar to the standard box plot and useful for comparing distributions between different sets of numerical data. In this release, the sales dashboard demo received a facelift. The sales dashboard now uses Bootstrap and is fully responsive. The app features a stunning design and utilizes many of our popular widgets such as Map, Charts, Calendar, Date Picker, and much more. So let's jump over to the browser and take a quick look. You can see I have my browser open to demos.telerik.com and I've navigated over to the new sales dashboard demo. And if you look at the dashboard, you can see we have some nice map controls here, and we have some date pickers to select date ranges, and we can drill down on some data here. We also have a nice team efficiency page that shows off some additional controls that drive a master detail view. So here's a nice interactive type of application that could look similar to something that you might build. Now, what's nice about the new sales dashboard demo is if I hit F12, I can pull up this emulator in Chrome, and you can see if I set this to Galaxy 5S or an iPad, for example, I can get a nice interactive view of how the application would look on that type of device. And you can see on an iPad here at 768 resolution, the UI for the application has been modified so it looks nice on any device size. I can also come up here and click a Galaxy 5S, for example, and just refresh, and you can see this looks great on that small screen size as well. So visit demos.telerik.com and check out the new sales dashboard. There's several more updates in this release, including the new spreadsheet features, Gantt editing options, and some diagramming improvements. The spreadsheet has been improved with the following new features. Hyperlink support has been added for cell content, multi-line editing has been enabled, and the ability to hide and show grid lines. This is useful when printing and exporting your spreadsheets. With the new Gantt options, you'll be able to precisely control editing options such as create, order, reorder, resize, and more. And the diagramming control now offers more options so you can customize the content size, font weight, style, and weight of connections and shapes. Among other features are client drag and drop events and the ability to find a connection point from the diagram canvas. For these demos and more, visit demos.telerik.com and try them out yourself. So let's move on to UI for ASP.NET MVC and UI for ASP.NET Core. Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC and Core consists of 70-plus controls, all powered by our Kendo UI product. Kendo UI provides feature-rich UIs rendered with HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript that work seamlessly on any screen size with responsive and adaptive rendering. You also get full control of the user experience with robust client-side APIs. With UI for MVC and Core, you get more than that. You get server-side rendering using Razor helpers and tag helpers, which means you have full IntelliSense and Visual Studio scaffolding to boost productivity. So let's take a look at what's new. Today, I get to introduce the new project wizard for ASP.NET MVC. Getting a new project up and running with UI for ASP.NET MVC has never been easier. With the new project wizard, simply click File, New, Telerik ASP.NET MVC application, and we'll do the rest. From the wizard, you can choose from C# or VB, or ASP.NET MVC 4 or 5. And several quick start templates, like the grid and menu template, that start you off with the most popular widget, the Kendo UI grid. And we've included templates for mobile web projects, so you can use your existing MVC skills to build touch-first mobile apps. Today, I get to share with you the new dialog widget using Kendo UI for jQuery. The new dialog comes packed with features like accessibility, animations, and complete customization of dialog actions. And remember, the dialog widget isn't just new for Kendo UI, but all other UI products that are powered by Kendo UI such as UI for ASP.NET MVC and UI for ASP.NET Core. The dialog widget is similar to the window widget with some additional features. With the dialog widget, we're able to control the title and define multiple action buttons. The content can be filled with any HTML content or contain any other HTML inputs or Kendo widgets. And any dialog wouldn't be complete without an optional standard close button and modal capabilities. Next, I'd like to introduce the brand new media player control. The new media player control is able to display video from static files in HTML5 supported format or from stream sources like YouTube. It includes full screen mode, volume, and tracking controls. The media player is included in Kendo UI, UI for ASP.NET MVC, and UI for ASP.NET Core. Improvements have been made to simple widgets like the numeric text box, all the way through enhancements to our more complex widgets like the spreadsheet. The R3 release is full of new updates and features that will make your data entry applications better than ever. Clear buttons are now standard across most input fields, and drop-down, combo, and autocomplete widgets received major updates like No Data and Add New Item templates. In addition, new header, footer, and item templates have been added, giving you full control over how drop-downs, combos, and autocomplete boxes render. Let's jump over to Visual Studio running ASP.NET Core and see some of these new features in action. So I just want to remind everybody before we get started that these features aren't exclusive to UI for ASP.NET Core. Any UI suite powered by Kendo UI can take advantage. What is exclusive to UI for ASP.NET Core and UI for ASP.NET MVC is the rich IntelliSense you'll get in the HTML helpers. So let's take a look at the code. I'm starting with just a simple combo box, and I'm going to pull in a custom data source that has customer information like names and photos. Let's open this up in the browser and see how it looks. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop this down, and you can see I'm pulling in all of the names from that data source. But let's make this a little more custom. Let's add a nice footer in the combo box to show how many pieces of data are coming back from the server. So back into our code, let's go ahead and specify a footer template. So I'm going to come back to my HTML helper, and I'm just going to hit dot in here. And you can see the rich IntelliSense come up, and when I type in template, you can see all the templates that are available for this widget. One of those that we're going to use now is the footer template. So I'm going to paste some code into the footer template here, and what this is going to do is count the total number of elements that have come back on this instance of the data source. So let's refresh the browser and see how that looks. And you can see when I click on the combo box, now I've got a total of 91 items found. So we have a nice footer here telling the user how many items are in this list. So if you look at the items in the list, right now we just have customer names. What I'd really like to do is put a photo next to those names so the user can see who they're picking from the combo box. So let's go back into Visual Studio and add that. So I'm going to create a new line here, and I could just easily type in template and specify the template for the items. I'm just going to go ahead and paste something that I've already created in here. And this is going to set a background image for the item, as well as bring up the customer's company name and their contact name, and just provide a little bit more data for the user that's using this application. So I've saved that. Let's go back and refresh again. And you'll see I have the names here and their company, but I don't have the picture yet because I just need to add a little bit of CSS style to make that picture visible. So I'm going to go over and just copy and paste some CSS that I've predefined into the template here. So I'm going to paste this below. We'll go back and refresh one more time. And just with that little bit of CSS, you can see we now have our images that show up in the customer dropdown. So this looks really nice, but there's a little bit of context missing here for the user. Let's go up here into the header template and just specify that the left-hand side is the photo and the right-hand side is the user's information. So we'll just go back into the combo box widget and add that header that we need in our dropdown. And I've already added the styling for this, so we can just go back to our dropdown box and refresh the page. And you'll see we have a nice header there, and it flows nicely when we scroll and stays at the top of the drop-down list. So now, if I were to come in here and type in my own name, you can see that it comes up with no data found. So let's customize this no data template just a little bit. So let's fully just explore all the templates that are available to us. So I'm going to go back into the code one more time here and just add yet another template. And this time I'm going to specify a no data template. And I'm going to say, sorry, no customers with the name, and then give it the instance text. So what that's going to do is whatever I'm typing in the combo box, it will come up and display in the no item template. So if I go type my last name in again, you can see it's mirroring that right here in the no items template. And you can see we've got a total of 0 items found as well. So there you see how you can completely customize the combo box, and these features are available for autocomplete, dropdowns, and many other templated controls that are in the Kendo UI suite. With the Kendo UI for jQuery R3 release, the upload widget got new features to simplify the user experience. Custom drag and drop zones were added, so you can completely customize your app's features however you see fit. And now, you can set file type restrictions by simply listing which file extensions are allowed by the upload widget. Plus, file management has never been more intuitive. Users can easily see upload status and quickly remove unwanted files. So let's hop over to a quick demo at demos.telerik.com and see it in action. In my browser, I've opened up demos.telerik.com, and I've navigated over to the custom drop zone demo. And I just want to show how this new drop zone works by taking some files out of my desktop here and just dropping them into this zone on the page. So let's start with the Kendoka. Let's drop him in there, and you can see that it's updating right here in real time. And before you can ask, yes, we can just go ahead and select multiple images and drop all of those in there. And you can see those are uploaded seamlessly without us having to do each one individual. So if we scroll down this page, we can actually see the code that makes this run. So we have a paragraph tag here with the class of drop image here text. And if we look at our declaration for the component, you'll see that we've just set the drop zone property with a selector for that element. And that's how you enable a custom drop zone for the upload control. So let's go look at some other demos. So I've navigated over to the validation demo on demos.telerik.com, and I just want to show how the new validation works with the upload component. So the first thing I'm going to do is over where it says upload PDF, I'm going to choose select files. And I'm just going to pull in one of these GIF files, and right away it says file type not allowed. So I know I can't upload GIF files here. I'm going to go ahead and click remove. And then let's try the upload image one. Let's do this again and do select files. And I'm just going to grab a couple files this time and hit open. And since graphic files are allowed here, it's going to upload successfully. And you can see I have the 3 files that I selected displayed here. So let's scroll down to the code real quick, and we can see that to allow these file extensions, we just need to set the validation property on the component, and here's the array of extensions that are allowed for that upload widget. So these are some simple but really effective ways that the upload control has been improved, and things that you can enable in your application today with the R3 release.
Thanks, Ed. Simple and effective. The 2 sweetest words in the English language for developers. I love it. Folks, please continue to send us your questions through the Twitter hashtag AskTelerik. We have folks answering those questions now online. Up next is Todd, who will walk us through an exciting new product we have called Kendo UI for Angular 2.
Hey, so my name's Todd Motto, and I am on the developer relations team at Telerik, soon to be known as Just Progress. So in this webinar, I'm basically going to tell you a bit about our Angular 2 components and how to get started with them, how to use them, etc. And I'm going to talk you through some live demos. We're going to do a little bit of coding and actually integrate the Angular 2 components that we've been working on into a real Angular application. So first off, these are the three URLs that we're going to be using. So obviously Angular 2 is moved across to angular.io. So you can go ahead and grab the link there. We're also going to be using the Angular CLI. So if you're actually quite new to Angular 2, then this might be really handy to actually get started with in setting up an Angular 2 project. It creates things such as modules for you. When you create a new component, it will then actually put it into the module for you to make things much easier. Thirdly, we've got telerik.com/kendo-angular-UI. So this is where all of our components are actually available, and you can go ahead and you can go and install them and actually play around with them. You can actually play around with them on the live website as well. We have a lot of Plunker embeds that you can go and customize and play with in real time. Now, I've actually got the project installed and I'm using a terminal inside of here. So what we can actually do is just simply paste this in and it will say npm login registry. I can enter my username, which is tmotto. I can then start to enter my password. And then it says, what is your email address? So I can do tmotto@progress.com. And then now it says logged in as tmotto to scope at progress. So these components aren't open source. They're only available on npm because Angular 2 is only available on npm. So to use these components, this is how you need to actually set up the project that you can actually start using them with. So let's go ahead. We can verify that this works. So we can do npm view. We can just copy this piece. Now the setup guide is really simple here. So again, we can just paste this in. And we know that this now works because we have all the different grid versions that we've actually released to the public. So to add these to our project, what do we need to do? So we need to follow this, add the components to your project. Now this actually uses the buttons. So we can actually go ahead and install the buttons because they're nice and simple. So again, we can go back and we can paste in the buttons here. We can wait for this to finish loading, which shouldn't take too long. And then we can go ahead and actually start to import these into our application modules. So while that's installing, we will go across to the components and then we'll find the buttons. So we've already done the npm install here. And again, our setup guide is really helpful here. We've got the embeds with the live code. So it says once installed, import the buttons module into your application bootstrap. So for those that haven't actually covered the application bootstrap, you can find out how to bootstrap an Angular application on one of our websites, which is ngmigrate.telerik.com. So you can go on here, you can click on topics, and you can follow our bootstrapping guide here. And we actually have a guide here from angular.module to ngmodule. So we can go ahead and click on this, and it will teach you all about the Angular 1 modules and all about the 2 modules. So if you need to read up more on how to get started by creating Angular modules, which is exactly what we've got here, then that's the place to go for that. So we've actually got this import line here, which is Kendo specific code. So what I can do is actually go across, and you can see here that my npm install is finished, and we can close this off and go into the app.module. So this looks quite similar to this website code here, where we actually need to import and add our definitions for our components. So we can do Kendo UI for Angular 2, and we can place this stuff in here, and we can just say these are all our imports for our Kendo components. And you can see here that I'm just importing the Kendo Angular buttons from our namespace at progress. So all you need to do at this point is actually copy this object destructuring where it says buttons module, and we can just go down to the imports, and we can just add this in. So this will essentially tell Angular that these buttons module need to be included in our ng module. So all of our packages are inside Angular modules. We've created our own buttons module here, and we're simply importing it from our install. Now the next thing we need to do is go into the Angular CLI.json. Now this is actually specific to the Angular CLI. So if you're not using the CLI, you can actually import your style sheet as per the website. So when we're actually using the Angular CLI, any styles that we want to import, such as this global styles.css, we need to actually go into our sidebar. So we'll open up the sidebar here and you see this node modules. So inside of here we've got our app progress scoped and we've got the Kendo Angular buttons which are inside of here, in the dist, npm, css, and then we've got this main.css. So this is all the styles that actually power our particular components for the particular component. So what we want to do to actually reference this npm styles that we've got in our node modules, we can simply just paste the path in here as in the JSON file for the Angular CLI. Now you can actually optionally go and import the actual styles here and then use them in this style URLs. This will allow for things like view encapsulation. However, with the Angular CLI, this is the route that we need to take and actually import them locally here. So what we can do at this point with the Angular CLI is just do ng-serve. Now this will then go ahead and create all the Webpack modules. It will bundle all of our code together, all of our styles and the components. And then we can actually go ahead and start implementing the button. So when I refresh this, we got hello Angular 2. So let's go ahead and go back to the telerik.com. And we'll actually go and paste this one in here. And we can neaten this up to actually make this more readable. Now you can see here that this Kendo button is an Angular 2 attribute. So that is actually a Kendo directive that we're actually attaching to this button to basically extend the behavior. Now we've got a click event here which we're expecting on button click, and primary is then true. Now this is a flag that will essentially change the styles on the actual button itself. Now when we go ahead and save this, now you can see that Webpack has rebundled the application. So we can go back to the browser and you can see this primary button. Now what this means when we click this is we'll actually get an error because we do not have an on button click function. So let's go back to the app component. So this is where all of our actual logic will live. So here we're expecting an on button click. So we can simply add this here. So we can then say, we'll do alert. We'll go hello Kendo UI for Angular 2. And we'll just make sure that we spell things correctly. So when we go back to the browser, Webpack in the background is now recompiling and it's refreshing. There we go. So we can press this and it says hello Kendo UI for Angular 2. So this is our very first button that's fully working, and just to show you that the primary is true, we can change this to false. We can wait for Webpack to recompile and we will get a different button which will be the silver one. So this is no longer a primary button. So this allows you to basically change the components for the Kendo components based on the data that you pass to Angular 2. And the really nice thing here is these are completely native. They are not wrapped. We're using the proper Angular syntax, so our Kendo button is expecting a binding called primary, which we can optionally add or remove. So we can completely remove this if we'd like to. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and install another component. What we'll actually install is the upload component. So again, we've got the live demo here where you can actually go and select a file. So you can try this out in Plunker, which is really good and all set up for you to get started. So we'll go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to use my other terminal here. So we're going to npm install this Kendo Angular upload. So while that's installing, we'll grab this import for the upload component. We can go back to our modules and we can just import this upload module here. Now again, we need to add this and tell Angular this is one of our imports. For the styles, we can do the exact same thing. So if we copy this and we can duplicate it, and instead of Kendo Angular buttons, we can do Kendo Angular upload. So this will import our main.css from our actual sidebar, so we can actually start using the buttons. For the next example, we're going to show you how to use the upload component. So we actually have a Plunker here that you can go and dive into, and you can select the files. So this is what our upload component looks like. Now we don't have a real back end here where we actually post these two. However, this gives you an example of how it actually is used. So this page gives you a lot of demos, which are actually really nice. So we've got some configuration examples, and you can see here that we just a custom component called Kendo-upload, and we've got these different bindings like the save URL, the remove URL, the disabled. So we're actually listening to these, so you can disable the upload at first, and based on some data, you could then toggle this to be false. So that would allow the user to then update based on some other data. And everything here is just driven from the actual Angular component class. So this is where you want to actually create all of your component logic. So we've also got upload for single or multiple files, so you can change multiple, and we can make this true if we wanted to. What else have we got? So we've also got batch, so you can batch different files, and they'll actually be uploaded to the server via separate requests. So this is a really good performance thing where we're not actually hammering the back end all at once, we can do one at a time. We've also got the different events, which are extremely important for like an upload component. So all you need to do is actually just create these handlers on your component classes, and our components will just take them over for you, such as here. So if we want to cancel this, we can have a cancel event handler, which then passes the event through for us. And this is actually how you would compose your own custom Angular 2 components. So you can create these custom properties that we bind to, and you can create your own custom events via the event emitter. So all of our components are completely native Angular 2 code, which gives you all the power that you need to actually go ahead and build these. So let's go ahead and choose one of these. So we'll actually grab this one here. So we can go ahead, and now that we've actually imported the styles, we've imported the component, the upload module. We've got the upload module here. So this makes it automatically available here for us. So what we'll do is actually hide these so we can see the screen. And for now, we'll actually just comment this one out, and we'll comment the button out as well, just to keep things a lot cleaner. This code will be available at the end. I will share the link. So what we can do is paste in our custom Kendo upload component. Now, this will actually throw an error at first because we don't have these properties available on the component class. So let's go ahead and just copy these three here. And what we can do is just paste them in here. So I'm going to change this to event, and we'll do any, and we'll just console log this out just to see what we get when we actually choose a file. So you can see here we have an upload save URL. So your backend, however you use these components, you will have a custom URL which can then hit your API. If you want to remove it, this is where your remove URL will go. And there's a lot of callbacks that you can actually provide these components to actually mutate the data. You can store the data, and everything works nicely with the lifecycle hooks and the one-way data flow. So let's go ahead and give this one a try. So one thing we need to do is actually reboot our server. So if we just, not that one. So if we go ahead and restart our server, because we've added the new style sheet in the Angular CLI, we need to do this. So we'll wait for this to recompile, and there we go, it's pretty much done. So we can go back here, give this a refresh, and now we see the proper styles. So this is exactly the same as the embed in here. So I can select the files, and I can choose a drawing of mine that I've done. Now this actually comes up with an error, but you can see the styles here because we don't actually have a save URL. We don't have like a localhost / save URL which I can actually hit and store this on the back end. But here's my file, it tells me the size, and I can plug this into any of my components. I can retry this here, so you can see that I'm actually retrying to do the upload. So there's a lot of features baked into these components that you can actually start using straight away. You can plug them in, and we can do multiple files. So if we just check that we've actually got multiple on here, so what we can do is create this binding, and we can do multiple equals true. So this will then go ahead and recompile this for us. So we'll give this a second to reload. That's now valid, so we'll refresh this just to be sure. Select the files, we can say I want that one, and there we go, we have two files. So this just demonstrates the power that the components actually give you, and there's so much engineering and so much effort and logic behind the scenes where we're taking care of a lot of things for you. So this gives you an example, and you can see here we got this select event, and you've got your files as an array. That's all from me, and we'll hand it back.
Thanks, Todd. Great stuff. I simply love what we're doing with Kendo UI for Angular 2. Just as an update, we've had lots of questions coming in, which is great to see, so please continue to send them through using the hashtag AskTelerik on Twitter. All right, let's switch gears a little. Sam will now cover the latest features we've added to the R3 2016 release of Telerik DevCraft for developers targeting ASP.NET Core, Xamarin, UWP, and Telerik reporting.
So hey guys, this is Sam, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about a few aspects of Telerik DevCraft that I'm really passionate about. I think most .NET developers nowadays are polyglots, which means we dabble into different programming languages and different platforms. So let's talk about some cross-platform tooling, what's hot in mobile space, and what's happening with reporting. I think the message you want to take home is the world is your oyster. With the right tools, you can target any app on any platform. So let's jump in. Alright, so let's talk about Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core. It's not often that we get to introduce you to a brand new product suite, and we had that pleasure with our R3 release. Now, before we start talking about what this product is, I think we need to take a small step back and understand where this fits. And for that, we need to look into the directions that we are seeing with .NET and ASP.NET. Now, for the longest time, the .NET framework as we know it has been one giant monolithic framework on which all your free applications run on. Now, that doesn't need to be the only way forward. While you can still run the full .NET framework, there is a new kid on the block, and that's .NET Core. And this is where a lot of the exciting things are happening. The new .NET Core is lean, it's modular, and it is cross-platform. So for the first time, your .NET applications can run not only on Windows, but also natively on Mac and Linux. You're seeing a resurgence of some of the command line tooling, which is common between all platforms. And .NET really lowers the barrier to entry so that anybody could get started with the new .NET Core. Now, for all things .NET, you can start at http.net, which is going to show you all the different flavors of .NET, the full .NET framework, the .NET Core, Mono, and other base class libraries. So you might say there are quite a few .NETs now, and that's not a bad thing. Eventually, you'll see a consolidation of efforts, and you'll see a lot more unification with the API contracts with .NET Standard. It is an exciting time to be a .NET developer. So let's talk about the bigger 10,000 feet .NET picture. As you can see, there are quite a few .NETs now. There is the full .NET framework on which all of your applications can keep running as they are today. This includes all of your desktop, web, and mobile applications, and you have the entire API canvas to run your applications. Then there's the new .NET Core, which we talked about is lean, it's modular, you only get to pick and choose the pieces that you want for your application, and it's cross-platform. And you can see UWP, ASP.NET Core, and console applications starting to use .NET Core. And then there's Xamarin, which is an acquisition Microsoft made earlier this year, which I think really completes the .NET story. With Xamarin, you can write C# and XAML towards making truly native cross-platform apps for iOS, Android, Mac, and other platforms. And all of that is running over a port of .NET called Mono. So as you can see, with the new .NET, you have a lot of flexibility. Not only can you target apps that run on any platform, you can also build all of these applications on any platform with the right cross-platform tools. Now, this is just the beginning for the new .NET, and I think over time you're going to see something called the .NET Standards Library gain prominence. What this allows you to do is have a consistent API contract for all .NET applications, and it offers the ultimate portability. So if you do not have device-specific code, there is no reason why a portable class library that you built for Xamarin cannot be consumed in an ASP.NET application, and vice versa. Pretty exciting stuff, right? So that's a high-level overview of some of the changes that are going on with the new .NET. Alright, so now let's take a look at what's going on in the ASP.NET land. And as we move forward, there's a small fork in the road. ASP.NET as you know it is a pretty matured web development platform, and the next iteration of that is ASP.NET 4.6. Now this runs on the entire .NET framework, which is 4.6, just as it does today. The new kid on the block is ASP.NET Core 1.0. And just like the .NET Core framework on which it runs, the new ASP.NET Core is written from ground up. It is lean, it is modular, and for the first time it is truly open source and cross-platform. Not only does it run on every platform, but it gives you the developer tools and lowers the barrier to entry so that you can develop ASP.NET applications on any platform. Pretty exciting stuff. Now, with all of this context of .NET and ASP.NET behind us, now let's talk about the Telerik ASP.NET suites, and hopefully it'll make much more sense as to where things are headed. So we have always had two hugely popular ASP.NET suites, UI for ASP.NET Ajax for WebForms applications and UI for ASP.NET MVC for MVC applications. And these two will continue to evolve, but they're meant for Windows developers inside of Visual Studio, and they're meant for applications that run on the entire .NET framework, that is .NET 4.x. Now, we are pretty excited to announce our brand new product suite, Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core, which, as the name suggests, is meant for ASP.NET Core applications that run on .NET Core. Now, both UI for ASP.NET MVC and UI for ASP.NET Core are powered by Kendo UI, which is our front-end JavaScript, HTML5, and CSS framework. So in both product suites, you get 70 plus polished UI widgets. They're just meant for different .NET runtimes. Now, you guys already know how to leverage our ASP.NET controls from inside of Visual Studio. Download the bits, reference them in your project, or bring them in through NuGet. But with UI for ASP.NET Core, you could optionally step outside of Visual Studio and do your development on other platforms, which makes things interesting. So enough talking, right? Let's jump into a quick demo. So I'm on my Mac here, building an ASP.NET Core application outside of Visual Studio. Here's the product page where you can get started with UI for ASP.NET Core. Now you'll notice that in my Finder window, I have a folder where I've started a Telerik ASP.NET Core application. Now, the structure of the files and folders in this scaffolded project is almost identical to what you will get when you do File New Project inside of Visual Studio. When on other platforms, you simply use the terminal, which works consistently everywhere else. So I could simply say .NET new -t of the type and then web to scaffold a new ASP.NET application. Alternatively, I could simply use the ASP.NET UOMAN generator by saying yo ASP.NET, and both of these things will scaffold the same exact project for me. Now, since I already have the project, let me open this up in Visual Studio Code. Now, there are a couple of things I need to do to light up Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core in this application. First, in my project.json file, which lists out all of my project's dependencies, in my dependencies section, I'm simply going to say use Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core and mention a specific version number. Next up, in my startup.cs, which is how my application bootstraps itself, I'm going to find the configure services method and say services.addKendo. And further down in my configure method, I'm just going to say, let this app use Kendo. And that's all it takes. Now, you'll notice that in the www.root folder, which is where a lot of my static stuff lives, I do have references to all of the Kendo UI bits, the CSS and the JavaScript. You can do this manually by just dropping the references in your folder, or you can go ahead and update your bower.json file to add a dependency for Kendo UI. Now, these steps are going to be essentially the same whether you do this inside of Visual Studio Code on a Mac or Linux, or whether you do it inside of Visual Studio in Windows. Essentially, this is what you need to do to set up UI for ASP.NET Core for your application. So beyond this point, it should be pretty boilerplate stuff. So in my view imports.cshtml, I can just do a global at using Kendo MVC UI. So I have it for the entire application. Then in my layout CSHTML, in my shared view directory, which is kind of like a master page, I'm referencing all of these CSS for Kendo UI. And then finally, I'm referencing the Kendo UI min.js and then Kendo ASP.NET MVC.js. That's going to be all of the stuff that I need to use the MVC controls in all of my pages. So in my home and index.cshtml, which is where my application starts up, there is some boilerplate stuff, but then I can do at HTML Kendo date picker. So this is essentially a razor syntax that renders an MVC date picker. You could also use some of the new tag helpers that we have for several widgets inside of UI for ASP.NET Core. So with my code changes in place, let me go back to my terminal and simply say .NET restore, just to pull down any other references that I'm missing in my project. And now that it's done, I can say .NET run to actually fire up my application. It says application started. So now let's go to our browser and we're going to say localhost 5000, which is where it runs. And here we have it, a native ASP.NET Core application running on a Mac, which is a beautiful thing. But then if you scroll down, this is the index page in my home view. Here's the Kendo UI date picker. And this is essentially a true Kendo UI MVC date picker with full interactivity, just as you expect. Now, this was a real quick demo to show a single widget in action, but hopefully you see the promise. Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core is here to light up all of your ASP.NET Core applications with polished UI. Use it from inside of Visual Studio on Windows or any text editor on Mac or Linux. Hope this was fun. Alright, so let's talk about what's new and happening in the mobile space and what can Telerik DevCraft do for you in the R3 release. We begin with one of my favorite product suites, Telerik UI for Xamarin. Now, before we jump in though, I feel like whenever we talk about mobile, we should really talk about all of the choices that you have, because there are a lot of ways in which you can build a mobile app today. The choice of technology that you pick should really depend upon the skills that you have, the audience that you're trying to cater to, and the type of app that you're building. And no matter what be your technology stack, Telerik DevCraft should always give you the polished UI controls and the frameworks to get the job done. If you have the time and resources, by all means, go and build a native app. And we give you UI for iOS, UI for Android, and UI for Windows Phone or UWP to get the job done. You might want to go build a hybrid app with Apache Cordova, and we'll give you Telerik Platform as an end-to-end mobile solution. You might want to build a truly native cross-platform app with JavaScript, and we give you frameworks like NativeScript or NativeScript with Angular. But for most .NET developers, the most enticing option might be the cross-compiled one, and that's where Xamarin comes in. Now, as we all know, at the beginning of 2016, there was blissful union with the Microsoft acquisition of Xamarin. Now, this has interesting repercussions on .NET developers. Microsoft has now truly democratized cross-platform mobile development with .NET. With Xamarin, you can now truly reuse your existing skills in C# and XAML and target iOS, Android, Mac, and a host of other ecosystems. There is literally no barrier to entry with Xamarin being free and open source and included in the Microsoft Dev Stack. Now, with the Xamarin architecture, your goal has always been to share the C# business logic between different cross-platform apps. But to me, the more enticing option is Xamarin Forms, where you also get to share your UI logic. You get to write an abstracted UI which Xamarin turns around and renders as native UI on iOS, Android, and Windows. So essentially, you truly have a single code base from where you target all different platforms. Now, the Xamarin promise is pretty great, but once you start building a truly professional app, you can feel the need for some polished UI, because there are some things you really do not want to recreate. Enter Telerik UI for Xamarin. This is our comprehensive suite of highly performant and polished UI controls for all your Xamarin apps: Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, Xamarin Mac, and Xamarin Forms. You get truly native cross-platform UI so you can build out your Xamarin apps from a single codebase. And the best part is it works the same exact way both from Visual Studio on Windows and Xamarin Studio on a Mac. Now, we are pretty pumped to announce that with the R3 DevCraft release, Telerik UI for Xamarin now has official support for UWP or Universal Windows Platform apps. So now from a single Xamarin Forms app, you get to target all platforms, iOS, Android, and all of Windows devices. Pretty cool, right? Now, I won't go into demos, but just to give you a glimpse of some of the polished UI that you get with UI for Xamarin. There are charts, lots and lots of different chart types with interactive features like pan and zoom, selections, and annotations. There is an excellent list view because turns out most apps need to display a list of things. The Telerik list view is on steroids with features like pull to refresh, flexible layouts, easy data binding, and item reordering and swipe actions. There is a flexible data form that quickly maps your business object to a Forms UI. You get UI elements that are matched to the data types in your object, and you get built-in validations for data entry. There is a beautiful side drawer which helps in app organization and navigation. You could embed any content in the sliding panel with customizable effects and slide-out transitions. There is a highly flexible calendar control with support for appointments and culture localizations built in. Now, these are just a few samples of the UI controls that you get with Telerik UI for Xamarin. How do you go about including them in your app? Well, simple. You can download them, but the easiest way is with a NuGet feed. Simply set up a NuGet source that points to the Telerik feed. Go ahead and add a NuGet package to your project and pull in Telerik UI for Xamarin. The best part is it works the exact same way on Visual Studio as well as Xamarin Studio. So there you have it. Do not reinvent the wheel, but use Telerik UI for Xamarin to light up all of your Xamarin apps. So next, let's continue our mobile discussion with UWP or Universal Windows Platform. I think UWP gets a lot of traction nowadays because of futuristic devices like the HoloLens or the Surface Hub being able to run the same apps. So let's talk about what's new and happening in Telerik UI for UWP. So we realized the importance of UWP for .NET developers, and we're going to continue investing in the product suite. It's a pretty mature product suite now with 20 plus polished and performant UI controls for all of your Windows 10 apps. You get some of the popular ones like the grids, the list views, the charts, and the graphs and gauges, stuff that you really do not want to recreate by hand. And new in the R3 DevCraft release, you get to see performance improvements all across the product suite, as well as the list view gains some features like the frozen group headers and a fun staggered layout. And here's a quick view of some of the more popular UWP controls that we have in the suite. Things like a performant grid, a flexible list view, maps, different types of charts, and lots of input controls. And all of this is out of the box and ready for you to light up your UWP apps. So that's all I have for mobile. All right, now let's take a look at what's going on in the world of reporting in our R3 DevCraft release. Now, many of you guys really love Telerik reporting, and that's for good reason. It's our comprehensive cross-platform reporting solution. You get interactive ad hoc report designing, generation, and delivery across a variety of report viewers on web, desktop, and mobile. There are report designers that are both standalone and integrated inside of Visual Studio. You get support for a variety of data sources and being able to export out your reports in different formats for your end users. So what's new in reporting in R3 DevCraft release? Well, lots of things. First, all of your reports now get an optional built-in table of contents. It's just like Word and makes it super easy for users to navigate through the report. You get to define custom interactivity actions, that is application logic that handles what happens when the user clicks on a certain report item in the report viewer. You get added security for your PDF reports through native and encrypted password protection. Other features include now being able to print your reports in continuous paper and performance improvements all throughout. You'll continue to be very happy with Telerik reporting. Now, let's switch gears to talk about the Telerik Report Server. This is our comprehensive report management solution. You get to store, manage, schedule, and view reports. Your users get to sign in with AD authentication and be able to design reports on the fly, all from a single responsive web interface. Now, with the R3 DevCraft release, we are adding RESTful APIs on top of just about every report server entity, which is very cool, and it leads to better integration of report server in your application stack. Now, as always, you do need to get the latest bits to see the new features, so go ahead and set up Telerik Report Server. Grab the latest MSI and let it do its thing. Notice how it installs on top of Report Server and starts to configure IIS for you. Once it's done, Telerik Report Server will run as its own site in its own application pool, and you can see all of that in your IIS management console. So let me show you a quick demo of the new RESTful APIs. So here I am on my Windows machine, and you'll notice that in my IIS manager, I do have Telerik Report Server running as its own site in its own application pool. So I can go to my browser, and this is my dashboard for Telerik Report Server. I can manage my categories, my reports, my data connections, and schedule tasks and users and so on. Now notice that this is running off my local host, and I have two categories of reports. So now if I go to localhost port number and then API report server /categories, I get an XML back or JSON back, which has just those two categories of reports. Now back in my dashboard, let's look at my reports. Looks like I have two reports here. So now if I go to localhost API report server reports, I get an XML back with just those two reports, 1 and 2. So now if you go look at the API reference in the Telerik Report Server docs, you'll see that you can have similar access to just about everything, things like data connections, scheduled tasks, and users. And it's not just get, you also get full CRUD operations, so you can write data back into the report server. Now, because all of this is RESTful APIs, you can do this from just about any application, console, web, desktop, and mobile, which means better integration of report server in your application stack. So this is pretty cool, right? And that's all I have for reporting.
Thanks, Sam. I'm especially excited about the new capabilities we've added to Telerik UI for Xamarin. There's lots of great things worth looking at there. Wrapping up our webinar, let's explore what's new in Telerik DevCraft for developers targeting WPF and WinForms. Telerik UI for WPF continues to be an incredibly popular control suite featuring over 100 controls for developers building applications on Windows. Currently, Telerik UI for WPF ships with more than 18 professionally designed themes. These are set easily through the Style Manager and can be applied across an entire application or against an individual control. In the R3 2016 release of Telerik UI for WPF, we've included a new theme called Office 2016. This theme not only defines colors and palette brushes for controls, it also introduces a new approach for adding icons and icon-like images through a font of glyphs. Previously, this was done through images. Using glyphs gives us better fidelity since they are expressed as vector paths. The RAD password box control is a new control in Telerik UI for WPF, and it allows you to obtain password input from users which is stored in a secure string. It shows predefined watermark text when empty, as well as a button that you can use to display the currently entered password instead of the specified password char. The RAD Cartesian Chart 3D control is a new addition to the RAD chart view set. It is the first control in our set to help you visualize data in a three-dimensional manner. The control uses the 3D rendering API of WPF, so you won't have to include third-party libraries. It's also very easy to use since it has a familiar API to other charts in the RAD chart view set. The RAD layout control is now official. This control allows you to add, remove, and reorder items on a control surface. This is great for end users wanting to customize the user experience. It also features a new splitter control for resizing operations when not in edit mode. Telerik UI for WinForms is our set of over 110 controls for developers targeting Windows Forms. It includes a huge array of features like 19 built-in themes, multi-touch support, document processing for common formats, localization support, and much more. In the previous release of UI for WinForms, we introduced a conversion tool that allows you to convert applications using standard WinForms controls to their Telerik UI for WinForms counterparts. In its first version, the tool covered 19 of the standard controls. In our latest release, we expanded our support to the data grid view, tree view, menu strip, tab control, status strip, month calendar, and tool strip. The R3 2016 release features a new control called the rad map. This control allows you to visualize tile data from Bing Maps and OpenStreetMap's REST services. It supports a wide range of features, including Bing Maps search, route, and elevation services. It can also visualize data from S3 shapefiles, KLM files, and SQL geospatial data files. Additional features include clusterization, colorization, and layers for visual elements, with some of these elements built in and ready to go, such as pins, callouts, paths, and more. There's other built-in functionality as well, like a navigation bar, search bar, scale indicator, and mini map. Finally, we are including new features to the rich text editor control to support the merging of documents, continuous section breaks, and new dictionary formats. Well, that wraps it up for today's webinar on the R3 2016 release of Telerik DevCraft. Please keep an eye out on the Telerik blog site for a wrap-up blog post highlighting this webinar, its HG recording, and answers to the questions you posed on Twitter. Finally, please take the time to download the latest bits and kick the tires for yourself. If you're not a customer today, you can access a trial of all the software we ship. Simply visit telerik.com to start your journey. On behalf of all of my colleagues, I'd like to thank you for joining us here to learn about the latest and greatest features we've added to the R3 2016 release of Telerik DevCraft.